poisoning the people with propaganda.
I've told you the whole time this election was fraudulent. We got so much proof. The only people that can deny it are crack-smoking, demon-possessed leftists.
Why don't you show us the evidence?
I don't have to show you the evidence. I will when time comes.
So you must also know that this is exactly what QAnon says as well, right?
I'm Todd Zwillich, and this is Breaking the Vote, our series where we track the growing assault on voting rights and efforts to undermine democracy in America. We're here to cover how the democratic process a lot of us take for granted is being attacked and exactly who's doing it. Now, chances are a lot of political bullshit is already familiar to you. Grandstanding, exaggeration, over-the-top promises, the hard sell. They may be dumb and irritating, but they're pretty tired as political tactics. The idea that all politicians lie is kind of cliche because, to an extent, of course, it's true. But at least in our lifetimes, we've never seen lies as blatant, as relentless, and as organized as the ones we have now.
A protest over a rigged and stolen election that nobody wants to look at?
You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
Propaganda has been recognized and weaponized by some of the world's most notorious dictators, by all of them, actually. Here, things like the free press and government transparency have spared us the kind of propaganda the despots crave. Until recently, why has it become so effective and so sinister?
The Democrats are the party of pedophiles. The Democrats are the party of teachers, elementary school teachers trying to transition their elementary school age children and convince them they're a different gender.
What's different is that the new American propaganda doesn't just attack an argument or challenge a fact. It goes for institutions themselves. It tries to undermine faith in them and change the nature of the truth. This week, we'll take you inside the evangelical movement that's preaching the gospel of QAnon. We hear from a top expert on how democracy-killing propaganda can sneak up and make unwitting people participants in destroying institutions. And we'll talk to a Fox News veteran who drew the wrath of the conservative right and 2020 deniers just for making a correct call on election night 2 years ago. But first, Michael Moynihan kicks us off in College Station, Texas, where he watched genuine conservative opinion mixed with propaganda with very American results.
With the 2022 midterms looming and fears of a federal government lurching to the left, local Republican activists aren't merely licking their wounds. They're spoiling for the next fight. The Rooftop Republicans is a group of MAGA faithful who meet weekly at a Mexican restaurant in College Station, Texas.
The focus of this group is to concentrate on working from the school board up to the presidency and bringing true conservatism to bear.
We are hardcore conservatives.
Both coasts look at us as a bunch of backwoods cretin, and we're not. He's a retired judge. I've got a PhD. There are various other people around here who are educated, intelligent, been a lot of places, done a lot of things, and we're tired of being laughed at. You look at the stuff that comes out of Hollywood, and you don't see a central white family or even a minor mixed family. There's 3 queers, 2 lesbians, 13 Martians, and a bunch of...
I've missed this film, but I'm sure it's on Netflix.
That's the central idea of who we are.
So you feel condescended to by the media and just by the culture in general?
Yeah, for years, decades.
Let me do a little experiment here. Give me a sentence. How you feel the media views you.
They think we can't think for ourselves and we need to be told what to do.
And they're laughing all the way to the bank.
Making money off of being condescending to you.
We're the competition, and they have to shut us down through any means possible to promote their agenda.
What is their agenda, do you think?
Communism.
I want to just be specific on that. Not liberalism, not social democracy.
Not liberalism with progressivism. Progressivism is just another word for communism, and that's what's taken over that part of the world.
Like liberalism in the sense of like Kennedy-style liberalism versus Swedish-style social democracy versus Soviet-style communism. I mean,
the manifesto with what they're doing, it's the same.
The Communist Manifesto?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is that a pretty uniform view here?
Yeah. One of their tactics is divide and conquer. And Marxists, they use language, they use race, they use economics, they use anything that they can find that puts a drive away between us.
My son is leaning towards liberal.
How old is he?
26. And when he and I talk about issues and really dive down into them, we agree on almost everything.
You do?
The concern about the elitists versus the people.
You see the enemy as the same thing. What is it that politically divides you and your son?
I think that he's listening more to mainstream media, believing the narrative that we are racist. You know, you're talking about Bernie Sanders, we're talking about unions, we're talking about Trump. You know, what is it about him? And it all boils down to we the people. They don't want to be dismissed. And they want a say-so in what's going on.
On the union issue, by the way, that's I think one issue where I've seen Republicans kind of move a little bit. I mean, the other day, Marco Rubio coming out pretty strongly against Amazon. You would never, ever, in 40 years of me being watching this stuff, see a Republican come out strongly in favor of a brand new union forming against a company like Amazon.
I think it's more about justice. He wants to push that crap on the rest of us, but he doesn't want it in his company.
Jeff Bezos has politics. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. And Marco Rubio is putting the idea about the media and about the elites above a probably typical disdain or distrust of unions.
At least the stories I've read from the people in those Amazon warehouses, it's like working in a Ford factory in 1910. They beat the hell out of you, tied you to the machine, and said you're going to drop dead on the spot. That's what's happening. And that's what they're supporting, is the people going back against management, saying this thing's out of control, we got to get it back to where we can live here.
People used to paint Republicans as the parties of the elite, of the wealthy, of the country club class, the Bushes. Now, Republicans using the language of the working class, of unions and the purpose of them.
Republicans are not. Donald Trump is.
Donald Trump is. Donald Trump, I say Republicans because he is the head of the Republican Party right now, right? You sound pretty left-wing sometimes, right? But if you went back to sort of 2000, when there was the anti-WTO protests in '99 in Seattle, it's a kind of a populist thing that overlaps between left and right.
Well, that's why this isn't about Democrat or Republican or anything like that. It's about the people versus the elites.
Yes. Do Republicans care about spending anymore? A $1.9 trillion spending bill, the biggest in American history adjusted for inflation. Does it bother you guys? I mean, that's kind of to a degree. I finally hear a little bit of dissent here.
Yeah. Well, I would say dissent. He spends money freely, and I'm okay with that, on the things that matter. So defense spending, infrastructure, border control, border security, and getting rid of the things that are sucking sounds.
So that's what animates you now: smaller government, less spending, lower taxes. Do you think that there's a likelihood of getting a sort of across-the-board kind of Trump, Congress of Republicans?
Yes.
So this is just the beginning of the battle to you guys.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Who are the elites that need to be knocked off?
Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell.
Schumer.
Somebody finally named a Democrat. Schumer. Those are all Republicans.
Anyone who's been up there for more than 10 years is corrupt.
Sometimes you've got to draw that line in the sand. The Republican elite had never drawn that line.
No.
We keep going over, the Democrats keep pulling left. Now's the time that people need to stand up for our Constitution. We're losing our rights.
So you don't see any room for compromise in the
Not anymore. I mean, we have got to stand up. We have compromised to death.
This group is about no compromise politics.
It's an unsurprising sentiment. Since leaving office, Donald Trump has unloaded on fellow Republicans, like Mitch McConnell and Liz Cheney, with a frequency and ferocity he typically reserves for Democrats. But as the battle for the soul of the Republican Party rages, the Biden administration has laid the groundwork for a sweeping progressive policy agenda, leading some Republicans to wonder if the party can stop squabbling long enough to effectively oppose it.
And Michael Moynihan joins me now here in the studio. Michael, those diner conversations, just one small part of your tour around America, talking to conservatives all over the country at a time when people are thinking about conservatives and where their heads are at. Every focus group needs applicability, I guess, to the broader world. So how much do you think this group in the diner over coffee reflects what conservatives are thinking now, post-coup?
Well, this is kind of my endless conservative tour. Texas conservatives have a different set of priorities than conservatives, say, in California or in Minnesota. They're also pretty significant in Texas. They have a governor that they love, and, they have a border that they're constantly concerned about. This is the conversation that I have with everybody I talk to. That was one of the first things. It is a bit disconcerting, but keep in mind that these are people that get together every week to be conservative. So they are like a little bit different than the average Republican voter, even in Texas, right? So you're going to have people that have this idea that, the media hates me, right? This is why I'm a Republican. This is why I watch Fox News. This is why I watch Newsmax. I watch all these other things because the media in general, Hollywood, CNN, the New York Times, they loathe people like me. Donald Trump was perfect for them because he was the candidate of grievance, right? He was the man that was getting kicked off Twitter. He was the man that was being unfairly maligned by the media. So this was the perfect avatar for how they felt or how they thought they should feel about conservative politics in America, being the other, being the outsider.
Can conservatives, can even these people in your focus group do they want to control the fact that their party it's not really conservative. It's not really small taxes like they say.
No.
It's a QAnon-addled conspiracy movement in many, many ways that is really on the foundation of a leader who lies incessantly and they know it.
One is that there's no relationship to a conservatism that anybody who paid attention to this stuff in, say, the 1980s. The 1980s on. The Reagan Revolution is, trickle-down economics. It's, Art Laffer and the Laffer curve. It is something about smaller government. It is something about lower regulation, smaller taxes, et cetera. Get the government out of our business. That was one of the big things that motivated the Tea Party. They were free market types. That's gone. The problem is, if you mix that sort of populism and that sort of economic populism with this kind of bizarro extremism that you see, and the kind of QAnon stuff, which I think has infiltrated some parts of the party. I don't think it's as, I think the media sometimes takes the QAnon stuff pretty far because it's an easy thing to debate, right? They're so crazy and they're so stupid that, but there's a lot of these polls that are, can go either way on this stuff, the way they kind of formulate it. But I don't think the QAnon thing is really the problem.
Michael, I'm starting to understand now why the propaganda of grievance in the closed loop. That propaganda is not new, but it's way more efficient now. I'm starting to understand how important that really is. The folks around your table who said to you, low taxes, small government, has nothing to do with what's going on out there.
Not the administration they support,
But they're still on the same team because the constant diet of grievance that they have for the elites or the people they say are looking down on them, that's the glue.
So the Republicans being rudderless, they're trying to glom on to all of these culture war things now, because on economics, what are you going to do? What is the difference in these parties? They say lower taxes. Okay, Donald Trump lowered corporate taxes. Some things on regulation. But they spent more than anyone in, history. Any Republican administration, I think more than the Obama administration's last. It's wild. So where is the differentiating factor? It's grievance. It's culture. It's they're out to get you. They're out to get you. They don't like you. I am not a person who is upset in any way about a bifurcated media atmosphere where people who want this stuff go and get it, whether it's Newsmax and Fox News. I don't think there should be one lock on the media. But we do have to understand that it does cause problems in the sense that it makes us very, very divided. We've always been divided. I think it's a myth that we weren't. But now, when you can live in your own reality, and everybody's guilty of this, by the way, you can live in your own reality.
Well, it's true. We're siloed. You can live in your own reality, and when algorithms are helping push that along and mold that for you, then it's a media world and a propaganda world that we haven't encountered before.
It's also a terrible world because the response to that can also be, add to the problem of saying that there is one objective truth and we need to correct that. Because what you do is you kick people off of social media, Donald Trump, for instance, and what do you think that does to the grievance industry? The grievance industry is now, on the Republican side, plus 300 points because Donald Trump's been kicked off. Some of their favorite psycho conspiracy theorists have been kicked off. And now they're off on Truth Social or whatever the hell it is now, Gab or I don't know, these other platforms. But there's the silos, when we try to fix the silo problem, we create more silos. And that's what's happening now by booting people off and saying, we need to have fact checkers that tell you what the truth is. A lot of these things are complicated. Some of them aren't. There's no Comet Pizza conspiracy. That sort of stuff is easy to dismiss. But other stuff is quite hard. And so I fear for the future of our politics when so much of this is about someone saying there is an objective truth and we have to find it. That's not an easy place to come to.
Well, Michael Moynihan, we appreciate, as always, your real reporting, real conversations out in the world. Thanks for bringing them to us.
Thank you for having me.
Is it personal opinion, free speech, or could it be coded language tailored to influence an audience into action? Up next, how well-meaning people are deceived every day into becoming unwitting participants in a political movement outside of their control. We're back with Breaking the Vote. Propaganda, you know it when you see it, right? Except that's not necessarily true in a post-January 6th era full of misinformation, deep fake videos, and leaders who lie so often that it's no longer a big deal to notice. I spoke with Yale professor Jason Stanley. He's author of How Propaganda Works, to explain how sincere, well-meaning people have become so easily exploited and duped, not just into believing the propaganda they hear, but into becoming unwitting participants in the creation of that propaganda. And it's a phenomenon that should have defenders of democracy worried. Jason, thanks for joining me. The term propaganda these days sometimes feels like information I don't like from a news outlet that I don't like. So what really is propaganda?
Propaganda is an attempt to communicate that bypasses rationality. One classic form is to evoke an emotion that's not grounded in reason. Many emotions are grounded in reason, but one goal is to evoke an emotion that isn't grounded on reason and use it to mobilize for some goal, say war. So Putin says Ukrainians are an existential threat to Russia, we must invade. So another way to bypass reason is just to express raw power, like straightforwardly lying and showing you can get away with it. It's not meant to communicate anything. It's meant to evoke raw power.
So you say in your book that well-meaning people can get sucked in, essentially, to becoming unwitting players in propaganda, propagating it themselves. How does that work?
It works in multiple ways. Let me give one example. Suppose the President of the United States tells you that the election is stolen. The President of the United States is an authority figure. Authority is the basis for the trust required for a healthy communication environment. When a major authority figure is telling you something, and that's the authority figure that you trust the most, then you're going to believe it, not because you have any other evidence that the election was stolen, but because someone in a position of great authority has told you that.
Now that sounds really important. Somebody in a position of great authority has reinforced the idea, because one thing you notice in this information environment is efforts all over the place to ridicule and destroy expertise. Ridicule and destroy authority. You even see it in public health. Tony Fauci doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a criminal. He's a fascist, things like that. There's a lot of, it seems to me, efforts to destroy other locations of authority.
Yeah, authoritarianism is all about destroying every location of authority except the leaders. Science is an enormous threat to an authoritarian leader. But the kind of fascist authoritarianism, far-right cult of the leader authoritarianism, where it's all about what this guy says, that kind of authoritarianism is deeply threatened by science. It's deeply threatened by reality, and science is the descriptor of reality. Authoritarianism is all about replacing epistemic authority, that is scientific authority, authority based on knowledge, by charismatic authority, authority that is based on a person.
What are the best conditions then for propaganda? It sounds like from what you're describing, a feeling of threat, a feeling of enemies at the gates, a feeling of losing something that's dear to you, whether it's your social status, your race, So what sets the conditions to make propaganda the most effective? What about us makes it the most fertile?
You can create the conditions, and good propagandists create the conditions. So the anti-CRT moral panic was sort of parasitic what happened in the schools with COVID. Parents were very upset and very anxious and angry at public schools. Critical race theory had nothing to do with the reason that they were upset. Was a way to mobilize them against a phantom target. The conditions don't have to be at all related to the target of propaganda. Germany was the least anti-Semitic European country in 1931 and the most anti-Semitic by 1939. So you can create the conditions yourself, and a good propagandist knows that. So you can't take anything they say or do as at face value. If they presuppose something, however innocuous, you must reject it, not just reject it, but forcibly reject it, because the only reason they want to believe it is to destroy you and your way of life.
Up next, we go inside the churches where the fire and brimstone sounds a whole lot like QAnon. We're with the evangelical pastors pushing conservative America into some troubling territory.
I've told you the whole time this election was fraudulent. We got so much proof. The only people that can deny it are crack-smoking, demon-possessed leftists.
Welcome back to Breaking the Vote. I'm Todd Zwillich. The church has been one of the centers of political life for generations, especially for Republicans. And the evangelical church specifically, fair or not, has become almost synonymous with the word Republican. In fact, while the number of those identifying as secular in the United States has reached its highest level in history, within the evangelical movement, followers are entrenching themselves even more. One major study found that there was, quote, no mass departure of white Americans from evangelical Protestantism from 2016 to 2020. That's astounding, and yet maybe not that surprising, given who was president at the time. The evangelical church has been the home of the Republican Party base for years, but now it's pulling it in a new, some might say dangerous direction, where some pastors are preaching a tainted, conspiratorial worldview, melding religion and politics in new ways. Vegas Tenold takes us inside one church that sounds like it's espousing more QAnon than Holy Scripture.
Evangelicals have been a powerful force in GOP politics for years. But faced with a changing nation, the church is finding itself older and whiter than the rest of the country. Fearing diminished influence, many pastors are grasping for answers and finding them in conspiracy theories.
People like, do you honestly believe that the military uncovered tunnels beneath the Capitol building and beneath the White House and in the Five-Fingered Lakes? Do you really believe that they found kids? Yeah, both live ones and dead ones. And if you try to keep that on the DL, you're just as complicit as Hunter Biden and the rest of them bunch of crack-smoking perverts.
Wow. Locke is a masterful preacher.
Bruce Grenzer is a former evangelical pastor turned atheist who lives in rural Ohio. He says that the spread of conspiracy theories like QAnon in the evangelical church has been a long time coming.
There was this increasing adoption of white nationalistic thinking, starting with Jerry Falwell and Paul Weyrich back in the late 70s with the moral majority, for example. And, so they birthed this baby that, when Trump, it came of age. They realized that the way to power was through politics. I was in one church in Southeast Ohio for 11 years. I preached a certain viewpoint. It was certainly we were a Christian nation.
Bruce preached fundamental evangelicalism and conservative values for almost 3 decades. But by the late 1990s, his religious and political beliefs had softened and eventually left him completely. But even though he moved away from the church, conspiracy theories still found a way to his family.
None of them are evangelicals, except for my third oldest son. Great kid, but was very non-political his whole life, never voted. And then in January of 2020, something changed. He has gone to a Southern Baptist church. He's told me that, well, my pastor believes a lot of the same things I believe. He sees this otherworldly element working within the government now. When Biden got elected, all of a sudden, Satan was sitting in the Oval Office.
Do you feel like your son has been led astray?
It's hard to sit by when someone espouses those things and there's really nothing you can do about it.
Bruce's son didn't want to be interviewed and didn't respond to our emails. They don't see each other as much as they used to.
I want to hope that there's going to come a point where he wakes up one day and says, this is not the path I want to be on, but my fear is he's going to become more deeply involved in these things. He's not only an awesome son, but he's the father to my grandchildren, and they mean the world to me.
Is ever going to see. You better know that America may fall one day, but it will not fall to Joe Biden. It will not fall to Nancy Pelosi. It sure ain't gonna fall to Cuomo. He's out. Can I get a witness right there?
Ludicrousness aside, the genius and insidiousness of Q is that anyone can be a part of it, and you don't even need to call yourself a believer. People can regurgitate Q tropes until the cows come home while still claiming, with a straight face, that they have no idea what QAnon is. Even Trump did that.
Well, I don't know much about the movement other than I understand they like me very much, which I appreciate.
He's up there right now. He's talking about Joe Biden. He's talking about Nancy Pelosi. Now, he says he's not hearing it. But, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck,
People call me a QAnon conspiracy. I ain't no Q, okay? I'm not in all that nonsense. I'm a truth seeker and a truth teller. And I'm very calculated with what I say. And so I'm very aware, very self-aware. I don't say things that I couldn't fight for if they sued me. I say things that I have verifiable evidence or eyewitness testimony or pictures or a background and a narrative to. I'm a little smarter than a lot of people give me credit for.
So you have evidence of Biden being a pedophile and Kamala Harris being
I can promise you if I say it from that platform, just like when I said Tom Hanks is a pedophile, it does not matter to me if people say Tom Hanks is going to sue you. I wish he would.
Why don't you show us the evidence?
I don't have to show you the evidence. I will when time comes.
So you must also know that this is exactly what QAnon says as well, right?
It doesn't matter to me what QAnon says. Everybody wants to paint you in a corner and say that you're a conspiracy theorist. The problem is the only difference between truth and conspiracy lately has been about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Because now we need some new ones because they all happen to be coming to pass.
Do you believe that the left is evil?
Absolutely. 1,000%.
Anyone involved?
Anybody that believes what the left believes is absolutely on the side of evil.
And you say that to your congregation?
Absolutely.
Does it not concern you that when you're telling people that a large group of people are evil, that they might take it upon themselves to act on those
two
words?
things. Number one, Jesus did the same thing. And number two, there's no seatbelts in that tent. They can leave anytime they want to. Nobody's keeping them there.
What is keeping them there is that Locke is not only validating extreme ideas, he's anointing them, giving them biblical truth. Could it be that you're wrong?
No. Absolutely not. Not in this issue. Now, have I been wrong before about things? Yeah. Have I apologized? Yes. But in these massive issues, to me, they're like fundamental staples. And there's no way I'm wrong about them.
But I just didn't tell you something.
When we come back, the evolution of propaganda from word-of-mouth conjecture and tidbits in daily periodicals, and the for and against war billboards and posters during World War II, to the full-blown cable news disinformation of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, to TikTok, Reddit, and more. Alexis Johnson joins to tell us how we arrived at this current iteration of propaganda that's putting many in harm's way and democracy in the crosshairs. Propaganda used to be a tool of the elites, but now it's well within all our reach, which might not be a good thing. Here's Alexis Johnson.
The term propaganda has got kind of an old school ring to it. It makes you think of war posters, secret spy transmissions, and general mayhem. But propaganda has actually evolved, and is still steering our country today. In the 1940s, Edward Bernays, the so-called father of public relations, wrote about the expansion of communication technology, saying, quote, "The United States has become a small room in which a single whisper is magnified thousands of times." And for anyone who's ever had a tweet go uncomfortably viral, that last line hit a little too hard. Pretty much all of the ideas about communication and propaganda that Bernays laid out are still very relevant. In the same essay, he called this communication network a potent force for social good or possible evil. And it sure seems like now it's being used mostly for evil.
The fake news, they want you to be discouraged.
There has been something that has been going on in terms of trafficking over the border to change demographics of this country for a long time.
I'm going to call out every single hospital, and they're going to have to answer for why they are chopping off the genitals and the breasts of healthy kids.
We've basically been trying to manipulate each other since people started communicating. Initially, propaganda was a tool only used by the powerful to control the masses of regular people. Tales of brave, strong soldiers helped motivate troops during ancient wars. Government and religious leaders were said to be descended from gods to cement their power. All propaganda. And with the dawn of methods of mass communication, it became even easier to spread these messages and to hit people over the head with them. During the Civil War, both Union and Southern states used propaganda. Even letters came wrapped in political messaging. When you imagine Santa Claus, you're probably thinking of a piece of Civil War propaganda. This drawing of Santa handing out gifts to Union soldiers became the blueprint that modern Santa drawings were based on. The war's end brought about a whole new crop of evil propaganda in the Reconstruction South. Jim Crow spread and was popularized in newspaper stories, drawings, and even the country's first big blockbuster movie, Birth of a Nation. And racist Southerners weren't the only ones to clock the power of film as propaganda. During World War II, the Nazis were infamous for their propaganda machine. Hitler employed skilled filmmakers to make movies glorifying the Third Reich and the Aryan race, and to spread lies about Jews. Political messaging became even more unavoidable as people brought TVs into their homes. Vietnam saw a battle at home between pro and anti-war messaging. And years of Cold War made the Soviet Union the villain in countless movies, books, and news stories. Over 100 million people tuned in to watch the made-for-TV movie The Day After, which showed an end-time situation where the Cold War finally became hot and nuclear bombs rained across the country. Then after 9/11, we were served a steady diet of freedom fries, America's mayor, American flag lapel pins, WMDs, and God bless the USA. It's no wonder that when we invaded Iraq, most Americans were totally down with it, thanks to propaganda, of course. But even as recent as the 2000s, you had to be someone with a huge audience to get a message like that out. Now, anyone can be a master propagandist. Can you slap some big white text over a picture of a politician that you don't like and hit tweet? Can you film a 15-second rant against someone you're not a fan of and post it on TikTok?
Hi, my name is Ketanji Brown Jackson. I gave pedophiles lighter sentences because I'm black. All black people should vote for me, or if you don't vote for me, you're a racist.
Well, congratulations, you've joined the long history of propaganda. Now the messaging isn't coming just from the powerful to control the general population. It's being created by everyone. Even the smallest Truth Social account can get an audience whipped up into a frenzy with a well-timed post. A single tweet can start a massive misinformation wave on COVID, election fraud conspiracies, and more. In the 21st century, we're now feeling exactly how democratized propaganda has become, just in time for it to possibly undo our entire democratic system.
He helped call the state of Arizona for Biden on election night in 2020. That accurate call touched off a firestorm from enraged Fox News viewers. And right after that, he was fired from his job, only to find himself testifying before the January 6th committee months later. Former Fox political editor Chris Steiwalt joins me to talk about the problems plaguing cable news, how it's hammering away at the foundations of American democracy, and what we can do to stop it. This is Breaking the Vote. It was election night 2020, and the first major news outlet called the key state of Arizona for Joe Biden.
This is a big development.
Yeah.
The Fox News Decision Desk is calling Arizona for Joe Biden. That is a big get.
We now know it was the former president's favorite network, Fox News, that made that dramatic call. And it was a stunning early decision that infuriated Trump and his allies.
We're getting a lot of incoming here, and we need you to answer some questions.
I'm sorry, the president is not going to be able to take over and win enough votes to eliminate that 7-point lead.
That naked truth reportedly sent Team Trump into an election night frenzy, lobbying Fox head Rupert Murdoch for a retraction. They didn't get one. And months later, the Fox News journalist in charge of making that call was let go. Fox said its decision to terminate Chris Stirewalt was part of a restructuring. Stirewalt says he was fired. Stirewalt went on to testify in front of the January 6th hearings, where he said a journalistic drive to be factual and first was the only thing that drove that consequential Arizona call.
By the time we found out how much everybody was freaking out and losing their minds over this call, we were already trying to call the next state.
That moment of hard facts from the former president's favorite propaganda network is surprising. But what does it say about the information environment that channels like Fox have created? And what could happen the next time there's a full-blown effort to obfuscate the results and there aren't enough Chris Stirewalts to push back? Stirewalt describes the propaganda plaguing cable news in his latest book, Broken News. I talked to him about that and about the pro-MAGA megaphone that is Fox News. Chris Stirewalt, formerly with Fox News, is here with me now in the studio. Chris, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Well, Chris, you were, of course, right in your famous call, Arizona, election night 2020. But you've spoken about all of the murderous fury that you got as blowback from the public, probably from within inside Fox News too. And I want to talk about that. But what was the blowback and the fury like for you for that very accurate early call?
Well, a call can't be early if it's right. Once the polls are closed, you can make the call. And it wasn't my call. It was a great team. We had the best team at Fox News. And there was a time when the network was very proud to tout how good our team was and that we were the best in the business. The problem is that telling the truth to viewers during an election cycle, if their preferred team is losing, is not good for the bottom line. It doesn't help to tell people what's really going on if they're not going to like what they have to hear. And in the run-up to the election, the opinion show hosts and a lot of folks who are coming on Fox News were telling people that Donald Trump was going to win again. They were reinforcing Trump's narrative that the only way that he could lose would be by fraud, or if it was stolen from him. Joe Biden was doing way better. Donald Trump did about the same in 2020 as he did in 2016, but Joe Biden did way better than Hillary Clinton. And by not telling viewers that over the course of the election cycle, they were shocked when we swung the hammer and told them the truth. They were not prepared for it. They responded accordingly. And that is the fault of the network that did not prepare viewers appropriately to understand what was going to happen.
Intimidation or murderous fury or murderous rage, as you describe it, has a purpose when it's directed at election workers or elected officials or journalists too. It's not just to vent anger, it's to get you to do something different.
Right, it's terrorism. A big thing is political violence became a credible threat, right? Donald Trump demonstrated that he could make political violence, real physical harm, a possibility. Every Republican politician who is thinking about, should I do the right thing? Should I tell the truth? Should I stand up for the Constitution and the American system? Should I stand up for this process? In the back of their minds, they're thinking about the fact that there are people who are willing to commit serious crimes and commit real violence. If you're a Republican lawmaker, most of them are just trying to keep their seats. But some of them have to think at a certain level, how much does Liz Cheney have to think about the safety of herself and her family? How much do these other people have to think about it? January 6th was evidence that Trump was a credible threat, that his supporters could inflict violence on his behalf.
So talk a little bit more about the expectation that Fox had set for its audience on that night versus the reality that you were reporting as an election analyst and a journalist. You talked about it a little bit, but talk a little bit more about the disconnect between the objective truth of the election on that night and the message that Fox's audience not only wanted to hear, but were prepared to believe if it didn't go their way.
So after Trump won in 2016, people said to me and people like me, aha, you said Hillary Clinton was probably going to win and Donald Trump won. Therefore, all of your hocus pocus and cracked chicken bones in the bottom of the pot are all illegitimated and Trump will win and it doesn't matter what the polls said. The news division shows at Fox, or what we used to call the news division, shows like Fox News Sunday and Special Report and others, offered a realistic perspective of the election, which is that it would have been much harder for Donald Trump to beat Joe Biden than it would have Hillary Clinton. I don't know whether Trump was trying to steal the election, whether he was laying down a predicate to steal the election at the time by talking about fraud and discouraging people from voting, or if he actually believes that stuff. But psychoanalyzing Donald Trump is a loser's bargain.
Chris, you testified in front of the January 6th committee about how election night was going to go in terms of tabulating the votes. I want you to take a listen to Steve Bannon here talking to some supporters way back on October 31st of 2020.
The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. And Trump's going to be sitting there mocking, tweeting shit out, you lose. I'm the winner. I'm the king. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. Because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it.
Agree.
I'm directing the Attorney General to shut down all ballot places in all 50 states. It's going to be no. He's not going out easy. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
I want to get your reaction to what Steve Bannon is describing there, because he seems to know exactly how election night and the false claims of victory from Donald Trump are going to go.
Well, I mean, the thing about Trump and what makes the whole thing so disconcerting for the health of the republic is he did it in the open, right? This stuff happened openly. We all knew what they were going to try to do. As we were getting ready for the elections, we knew that Trump would assert victory. It was in the paper. And Donald Trump, with all, not with all, but with many of the greatest crimes that you have seen in political history, Trump just does this one right out in front. You see it laying out, and he's working his way up to it. He's laying down the predicate with his supporters. Some of them probably believed him. Some of them, I think, like Bannon, were cynical and played along, like, oh, this will be that this was a gambit, that they didn't believe it. But the people I really feel the worst for are the people who believed it, the people who were duped and fell for it. What was shocking to me were the number of what I thought were normal Republicans in Congress, particularly, who went along with this sort of self-coup that Trump was trying to engage in. When I saw Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise sign on to the effort to steal Pennsylvania's electoral votes, I thought, where are we now? And I assume, again, that they did this stuff because they knew it wouldn't work and they wanted to placate Trump and please him. But that was the scary moment for me when I saw how many in the Republican Party were willing to play along for their own personal advancement.
Chris Stirewalt, author of Broken News, formerly of the Fox Decision Desk, famously Arizona on election night 2020. Chris, thanks so much.
You bet.
That does it for this edition of Breaking the Vote. When we're back, Hungary's Viktor Orban pays a visit to America and continues his authoritarian love affair with the American right. Plus, we speak to the definitive voice on the rise and fall of the strongman to see if this country's democracy is resilient enough to withstand the threats. Make sure to sign up for our weekly Breaking the Vote newsletter. That's at vice.com/breakingthevote. And we'll see you next time.
I'm Michael Learmonth, editor-in-chief of Vice News. Too often, traditional news outlets shy away from the real stories and experiences of those living through global conflicts. Not Vice News. Our reporters are on the ground, fearlessly covering the human stories that shape our world. You and millions of others can continue to read, watch, and listen to Vice News for free. But we hope you'll consider making a one-time or ongoing contribution of any size at vice.com/contribute. Every contribution, no matter how big or small, helps support the journalism Vice News brings to you every day. Thank you.